Fine. That's it. Fine. So it is an honor and a privilege to have Professor Dr. Manuel Portela from the University of Coimbra here today. He is a full professor in the Department of Languages, Literatures, and Cultures in English at the University of Coimbra. But he has also worked as a theater director, cultural programmer, curator, and translator. And at present, he's also the director of the General Library of the University of Coimbra. His research focuses on a very modern and ambitious field like digital critical editing, electronic literature, and comparative media studies. He has a book published at MIT Press on scripting, reading, motions, the codex, and the computer as self-reflective machines. And another study, literary simulation and the digital humanities, reading, editing, and writing. He is part of the PhD program in the materialities of literature, of which he is co-founder and director. And he also works in the LDOD archive, collaborative digital archive of the Book of Disquiet, in an experimental textual environment. And his lecture today is on bibliographic codes and reading frames in Brian Stanley William Johnson's novels. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Viorica. Thank you to your program for inviting me. Thank you. And so I'm very pleased to be here, and I greet everyone. So it's I haven't been to Salamanca in many years, and it's kind of a coming back, even it's virtual at this point. So as you learned from my presentation, most of my interests are situated in this crux between literature, media, and experimentation with the materiality of media and language. And that is one of the reasons why I usually am attracted to works that are intriguing in their material form and do experiments with the inscription technologies. And Johnson was one of the authors that caught my attention many years ago. And the talk that I've prepared for today is based on two particular novels of Johnson, but I'm going to introduce B.S. Johnson because I know that he's not very well known. Let me just share my slides here. Okay, share slide. So the title, Bibliographic Codes and Reading Frames in B.S. Johnson's novels, really points to one particular feature in his work, which I think is highly original, although perhaps looking back from the experiments that we see being made with multimodal novels today, they don't seem as innovative, but I think if you place them in the context of the 1960s, when he published his novels, he was really doing new work. He was inventing new forms of setting the text on the page in ways that spoke to narrative meaning. So the abstract that I've proposed for this talk says that I'm looking at the embodiment of typographic and bibliographic elements in the narratives. And so I'm looking at the feedback between the bibliographic and the narrative elements in these two novels, The Fortunates, 1969, and How's Mother Normal, 1971. These are two of my favorite books from his collections. I argue that B.S. Johnson uses formal features of page layout and codex structure, both as expressions of narrative content and as reading frames. The challenges of giving form to narrative from the point of view of the narrating voices and from the point of view of the writer. And I think this is also one feature that is common to most of his works, is that somewhere at a given moment in the novel, he will include himself as a writer. There will be some kind of reference to the writer within the text. So we have different narrators, but sometimes also the writer. So the challenges of giving form to narrative and from the point of view of the narrating voices are ergonomically experienced by readers through their material engagement with bibliographic codes of the novels. So what I'm going to try to show you today is how the way the novel is set up in terms of typographic layout, but also in terms of the arrangement of quires, sometimes the entire book structure is set in such a way that it not only becomes part of the narrative content, but it also kind of transfers to the reader, to the process of engaging with the material, some of the problems that the material raises. So Johnson's experimentation with book forms creates a feedback loop between narrativity and printness that makes readers aware of their own constrained participation in the act of constructing their own reading. So what I'm claiming in relation to Johnson is that the devices that he has invented are very effective in making readers aware that they are constructing their reading. They are constructing the connections. They are constructing the order. They are constructing some of the meanings that are coming out of the narrative. So I think the print, the materiality of print is not alien to the narrative content. The writing problem of giving sense to lived experience through the particular medium of the print novel is thus reenacted in this cognitive framing of the act of reading. So this is what I mean by the framing of the act of reading. So there's a kind of a cognitive priming of the process of reading that happens through these dimensions. So let me read some of my notes here. Experimentation with bibliographic and typographic layout has turned into a significant feature of contemporary novels, particularly those that self-consciously explore the conditions of material production offered by current digital media. So there's been a whole theory of mediation in contemporary novels that claims that we have several novelists rethinking the book and the book forms through the digital medium. So these are post-digital novels. So they are still using the print form, but the print form has been changed due to the fact that the novelists, the writers, have been using digital tools to compose their novels, not just in terms of layout and page layout and typographic choices, sometimes using programs, software programs like Adobe InDesign and other types of programs, but also because the writers are using the internet as the environment for exploring connections, exploring references. And so many of these novels are post-digital novels in this sense. And the fact that many of these novels have become multimodal in the sense that the linguistic component interacts with illustration, with layout, and other aspects of the book uh, is a consequence of a kind of uh, mediation of new media by old media. So the print book is remediating the digital environment. And so these books are highly dynamic from that point of view. Since the late 1990s and early 2000s, integrated software tools for designing books, such as Adobe InDesign, have enabled writers and designers to collaborate in the extension of features of typographic composition for continuous running text. Such collaborations often result in the invention of a unique layout for a particular work, thus raising typographic and layout into crucial expressive layers of print narrative. Thus raising typography and layout into crucial expressive layers of print narrative, as we can see in novels by Mark Z. Danielewski. So these three examples, uh, one from 2000, the other from 2006, and the other from more recent. So it's a 5-volume series published between 2015 and 17. If you look at these novels by Danielewski, you realize that each of them has a unique typographic setting. So the author has invented a specific way of laying out the text. And this is now, I think, a very common feature of contemporary uh, narratives. And what I'm suggesting is that Johnson was doing precisely this in the 1960s, was inventing new forms of laying out the text that would feed back into the narrative. So as we can see, novels by Danielewski, also Steve Tomasula. So this is another incredible novelist that has produced very complex, multi-layered graphic novels with text and image and diagrams and all sorts of forms of representation. So this is one of his novels, Vass, an Opera in Flatland, 2002. This one is 2006, The Book of Portraiture. He has also created a new media novel, a mix of film, hypertext, sound, and print and voice. So it's really experimental, a really experimental author in his work. And also Charlie Jackson, another really interesting author that moves between the digital and the print medium, and many others. So this heightened visuality, including hybrid forms exploring image and text overlays and juxtapositions, can be seen in literary practices in many languages across the world. And we can say that it has become one of the features of contemporary print novels as they move into the new media ecology of book production. In our program, in the Materialities of Literature program, we have had several students analyze authors and works that recur, and they adopt these strategies, and they explore these strategies. Those compositional practices demonstrate how the post-digital conditions of production have resulted in an intensification of the experience of the codex. Such retroactions across media are often used to explore medium reflexivity, narrative metalapsis, and unnatural narration. So it's interesting that many of these typographic devices are not illustrative in any way. They are, I think, fully integrated into the structure of the narrative, and they represent additional forms of exploring narrative. So the space of the narrative, the space of narrative. So Johnson's, these are some of the bibliographical notes that biographical notes that you can collect about Johnson. 19 B.S. Johnson, 1933, 1973, was an English experimental novelist, poet, literary critic, producer of television programs, and filmmaker. He was an incredible creative author. Another biographical note, a London-born novelist whose works include The Unfortunates, 1969, consisting of 27 unbound sections in a box, How's Mother Normal, 1971, and Christy Mowry's Own Double Entry, 1973. His works combine verbal inventiveness with typographical innovations that resemble the techniques of concrete poetry. He committed suicide in 1973, so he was a really tormented writer, very creative, but also very tormented, and he killed himself. But the amount of work that he produced from 1960 until 1973 is really amazing for its originality and its depth. No? This is an excerpt from one of his posthumous books. Aren't you rather young to be writing your memoirs? So he was writing about his career in the early in the early 1970s. So I think this was the last one of his last books. And here he's talking about the way people were receiving his experiments, and somehow many of his critics didn't really understand what he was doing. And I think it's clear when we read this that what he was trying to do was not in any way some kind of random or let's say superficial experiment. So he says, experimental to most reviewers is almost always a synonym for unsuccessful. So there's this kind of negative connotation to the word experimental. I object to the word experimental being applied to my own work. Certainly, I make experiments, but the unsuccessful ones are quietly hidden away, and what I choose to publish is, in my terms, successful. That is, it has been the best way I could find of solving particular writing problems. Where I depart from convention, it is because the convention has failed, is inadequate for conveying what I have to say. So this is really important, no? Because I think most of his novels have a specific typographic imagination. And the device, the typographical solution that Johnson comes up with is entirely adequate for the narrative problem of that specific novel. And is also trying to overcome certain limitations that he finds in traditional setting of prose. The relevant questions are surely whether each device works or not, whether it achieves what it set out to achieve, and how less good were the alternatives. So for every device I have used, there is a literary rationale and a technical justification. Anyone who cannot accept this has simply not understood the problem which had to be solved. And I think it was only much later, you will see that there was a revival of Johnson's work in the well, after 2000. So these are some signs of that kind of revival of his work. The first critical reading was published in 2001, and then we had a second edited volume in 2007. His works were republished. So for the first time, we have a new edition of his works. Omnibus in 2004 was a collection of four of his novels. He was also a filmmaker. So one of his a collection of his films called "You're Human Like the Rest of Them," which is the title of one of his films. This was released by the British Film Institute in 2013, and he has some incredible films. So these films, all of the I think he directed the film, he wrote the screenplay, so everything is created by Johnson. And there's a documentary as well, but most of them are short fictions. And also the selected prose and drama of B.S. Johnson was published in 2013. A group of scholars created the B.S. Johnson Society in 2009, and they started a journal. This was kind of a short-lived journal. It only published 3 issues, but anyway, there was a group, however small, there was a group of people who came back to his works and tried to revive the reading and the knowledge about Johnson. So now I'm going to show you a short film. This was made by, this is a collage of clips from Johnson's. Let me just stop here and change the screen. So this was made, I think, by one of his, well, I think it must have been someone from this group of scholars who shared interest in Johnson's. And this is a clip, well, it's a collage of clips from different films by Johnson. I'm not sure if I'm, let me try again because I'm not sure if I selected the share sound.
We could hear it.
Yeah, you could? Okay. Okay. Audio, because sometimes the sound is not. Okay. So let me know if you can hear it. No, this is not what I want. Stop. Sorry about this, but I was going back to the slides instead of going to the...
The trouble with this, but that it's also more difficult to do than
Can you hear
one's
it?
really interested in.
Yeah.
For the self-disgust at undertaking rubbish makes it all the more difficult to bring oneself actually to get on with it. Another man Johnson wrote for, Osborne, not only paid badly, but was impertinent to him as well. Whereupon Johnson, who was a big man for his time at 6 feet tall, knocked him down with a folio, which is a book this size. Yet at the same time as being capable of better than journalism, Johnson needed the discipline of a deadline to make him work. There are some who are compulsive writers, who write despite all the odds. There are others, and Johnson was one, who write only when something forces them to. All his life, Johnson was fighting his tendencies to indolence and procrastination, besides a deep-seated melancholia and all his various physical defects. Nor does he seem to have known much of what has been called the fierce joy of creation.
I allow you may have pleasure from writing. After it is over, if you have written well, but you don't go willingly to it again.
And yet he wrote so much. He was poet, playwright, essayist, critic, novelist, scholar. He attempted virtually every literary form, always with professional competence and sometimes with brilliance. This very versatility has, of course, led him to be undervalued as, say, a poet. Yet the irony and satire of his poem London still have point for us today.
For who would leave unbribed Hibernia's land, or change the rocks of Scotland for the strand? There none are swept by sudden fate away, but all whom hunger spares with age decay. Here malice, rapine, accident conspire, and now a rabble rages, now a fire. Their ambush here relentless ruffians lay, and here the fell attorney prowls for prey. Here falling houses thunder on your head, and here a female atheist talks you dead.
Johnson pursued his literary ambitions for 10 years whilst earning a living from hack work, and then a syndicate of booksellers approached him to write what would be the first real English dictionary. The point was that English was not considered then to be a permanent language. The 17th century poet Waller said, "Who writes in English writes in shifting sands. Poets that lasting marvels seek must write in Latin or in Greek." So there was therefore this feeling in the 18th century that the language had to be stabilized, given a standard.
We've got to streamline these ideas. We need Grammarly.
So this is let me just go back here. So this is an excerpt from Johnson's documentary on Samuel Johnson, as you could see. So you wrote some programs for television, but I think when I was trying to show you the video, somehow Google changed my film, and so let's go back to the film that I really wanted to show. So this clip here is called Johnson in Death, and it's a series, as I said, a montage of a series of excerpts from different films.
The problem with hack work is that not only is it usually very badly paid, but that it's also more difficult.
It's not this one. So what's happening here? No, somehow I'm not able to show it.
He was a big man for his time at 6 feet tall, knocked him down with a folio, which is a book this size. It reminds me of a joke. Everything reminds me of a joke, if I'm lucky. Obviously, for me, this is a very exciting moment, and also a moment of great relief that I can write another novel. I'm going to read some more poems now. It may be that if you want to go and have a cup of tea, this would be a good time. I know that's what you masses are like. Mention of poetry and off you go.
E.S. Johnson wrote 7 novels, as well as poems, plays, journalism. He made films. He wrote funny, honest books. Often these books are about himself. Some of them are curious objects. He designed a special type character for Albert Angelo. He cut holes in the pages and arranged text in columns. The Unfortunates comes loose, shuffleable. It mimics the randomness of memory. He had obsessions. They recur in his work.
I was driving and I happened on a road accident very shortly after it had happened. And the rider of the motorcycle had been thrown across the road and had hit a wire fence of the sort which has a concrete posts with holes in them and single wires through them. He'd been thrown against this wire fence, and the wires had gone through him like a cheese cutter through cheese. And it stayed with me, that image, that metaphor, wires going through a man like a cheese cutter through cheese, for a long while now. It's a metaphor for the way the human condition seems to treat humankind.
Still, he makes good company. He said he wanted writers to write as though it mattered, as though they meant it, as though they meant it to matter. And he did. He was bawdy, funny. He was a brilliant, childish figure, rude, arrogant, insecure. But death fills his work, animates it even. He dwelt endlessly on it. The memories in the loose, frail sections of the unfortunates are of a friend he lost to cancer.
Tony. His cheeks sallowed and collapsed around the insinuated bones. The gums shriveled, was it, or shrunken? His teeth now standing free of each other in the unnatural half-yawn of his mouth. Yes, the mouth that had been so full-fleshed, the whole face too, now collapsed, derelict.
He wrote to get these things out, so they'd be somewhere else. In a book, rather than in his head. In a review of Sylvia Plath, written after her death, he said, "I must yet question the value of these poems. After all, they did not save her, did they?" This was the job of his writing, to save him, to lessen the pain of the wire biting into him.
The only thing a locust could do was to make itself an awkward thing to eat by sticking out its arms and legs and wings, to make itself an awkward thing to kill. To make itself an awkward thing to kill.
Even difficult, rude B.S. Johnson couldn't make himself awkward enough. He wrote 7 novels, as well as his poems and plays. He argued criticism was worthless, and he wrote that too. He made films like this one, Fat Man on a Beach. He's good company in it. And then the next month, he sank into the waters of his bath and killed himself.
So you can see from this film how Johnson was obsessed with death. That final image, so that of the film, the Fat Man on a Beach, when you see him going into the sea, is one of his last creations before he commits suicide. So you can see that death is very much one of the problems that we can find in his work. So let's go back to the text and see how we attempted to address some of the concerns through experimentation with the book form. So these are his books. The first one was published in 1963, Traveling People. All of his books have autobiographical elements. So this is something that was very important for Johnson, was to try to be true to his own experience as a human being. This is the second novel, Albert Angelo. This novel is 1964, and it's based on his experience of teaching evening classes in around London in secondary schools, which is something that he also turned into one of his films, Troll, 1966. The Unfortunate, 1969. So this is the one that I'm going to talk about in more detail. How's Mother Normal? I think is masterpiece. It's an incredible work, and I'm going to talk about this one as well. A geriatric comedy, 1971. This one was already published posthumously. Christy Mowry's Own Double Entry was his last novel. And then this is the memoir book, Aren't You Rather Young to Be Writing Your Memoirs? So by B.S. Johnson's work can be placed in a genealogical relation to modernist and postmodernist experimentation with graphic layout based on letterpress and offset technologies on the one hand, and in an intermediate relation to the current post-digital explosion in experimentation with the visuality of printed language on the other. So in my view, his work speaks to the past, to modernism, in terms of having a heightened awareness of typography, but it also speaks to the future because he invented forms of organizing the page that are now becoming more and more frequent as forms of expressing the novel in terms of its visual layout. In early modernism, compositional conventions in the mise-en-page of poetry, theater, and fiction were creatively transformed by foregrounding the visuality and spatiality of printed language. One significant contamination in the early modernist period involved the language of the periodical press and print advertising, as well as the technical features of the typewriter, which provided new sets of possibilities for composing language typographically. Unlike the visual layers and effects in other postmodernist novels produced in the 1960s, the specificity of Johnson's work with layout and codex structure lies in the fact that his experimentation creates a dynamics between the local relevance of typographic devices, that is, those cases in which the typography is expressive of a circumscribed element in the narrative, and their global relevance as an overall framing of the entire narrative. So I see a dialectics between the local relevance in terms of one specific element that is being typographically set, and also the global relevance in how those elements, the different elements, then give shape to an overall framing of the process of organizing the narrative and reading the narrative. I argue that Johnson creates a unique bibliographic form for each narrative and thus raises its print materiality to the level of narrative tool. So this is my major argument. So he is inventing bibliographic forms that are specific to those narratives. And by doing that, he is turning the print materiality of the text into an element of the narrative. Attention to the work of B.S. Johnson since the early 2000s suggests that current multimodal genres have also contributed to this revisiting of earlier experiments with the visual aspects of narrative. Essays published by Philip Tew and Glyn White, a biography written by Jonathan Coe, the collection Rereading B.S. Johnson, the founding of the B.S. Johnson Society, the re-release of 4 of his novels by Picador, the publication of a DVD with his films, the opening up of his archives at the British Library in 2013, the launch of the B.S. Johnson Journal, 2014, as well as several translations. So this was also so this revisiting of his work that occurred in the 2010s also was reflected in the translation, as well as several translations of his works into Polish and French, testify to the growing interest in his work. Several studies have analyzed his narrative techniques and thematic concerns in detail, either within the context of his own novels or in relation to other contemporary authors of the 1960s and early 70s. While his typographic and bibliographic devices have been described as part of the reflexive layer of his fiction, particularly as regards the presence of the book form in the narrative and the symbolic function of the layout, those components have not yet been analyzed as globally relevant for staging the experience of narrativity in relation to the cognitive and active processing of reading. So this is another specific aspect of my approach, is that I'm thinking of these devices as a way of drawing attention to the cognitive processing of reading. So the way we make sense of narrative, make sense of characters, the way we create a story world by reading letters. So what do I find interesting in B.S. Johnson's work? I've divided this into maybe three major aspects. The first one is an attempt to engage with the truth of lived life, as if somehow the phenomenological experience of the self could be turned into writing. The novel as something that happens to the writer, or as exorcism of the hurt of some experience. So this is really, I think, central and common to the different novels. So we find Johnson always concerned with trying to give some kind of form to the experience of being in the world, of suffering, of being faced with death. The second aspect, I think, is a realization that the subjective presence and the constructedness of fiction are somehow compatible. So, again, the disengagement with the truth of the experience of lived life does not preclude, does not contradict all the elaboration and the constructedness of fiction. So somehow this process of elaborating, of creating complex constructions is a way of coming nearer to this lived truth, this subjective experience. And finally, the third aspect, the fact that formal invention on the textual surface intensifies the reader's cognitive and emotional engagement with the lived truth of the fictional world. Sometimes there's this idea that when you move away from convention and create some kind of barrier for the reader to approach the meaning of the text, you are somehow detaching the text from connection to real life experience, and it becomes just a formal experiment. And I think when I was quoting Johnson earlier, and he was trying to say that is not referring to his works as experimental in the sense of unsuccessful, because the devices have been thought out and thought through, and he has when he opts for a specific device, he's really doing that for a reason, and I think that's really valid. It's a really valid point. In the sense that he never, I think there's a really unique balance between the language, the way he uses language, and the way he filters language, or he creates some kind of friction between the language and the typography, the setting, the page setting, and the organization of the book. So this is a new edition of The Unfortunates, was published in 2009, again, during that period of revival of interest in Johnson. And as you can see, The Unfortunates was a box. It's a book in a box. And all the book is divided into sections, not even chapters, sections. And it's as if each quire of the book was loose, so they don't have they are not bound, and the only rule that he has applied in this book is that the first quire and the last quire, so the opening and the closing of the narrative, are in that position, but everything in between can be shuffled by the reader. And the story of The Unfortunates is a story that tells the narrator is talking about, and again, this is something that is based on a life story, and the narrator is telling about a friend who had cancer, and is the narrator is a newspaper, sports newspaper reporter, and is going into this town to cover a match in a Saturday afternoon, and that specific place is connected to the memory of this friend that has died, and the whole process triggers this kind of narrative of their life, their relation, from the times they were at university to later times, and also the visits that he paid to this friend. And in fact, the entire novel is a way of trying to mimic the way memory works. Now, this all very associative and complex layers. So this is a note that comes inside this particular novel. This novel has 27 sections temporarily held together by a removable wrapper. Apart from the first and last sections, which are marked as such, the other 25 sections are intended to be read in random order. If readers prefer not to accept the random order in which they receive the novel, then they may rearrange the sections into any other random order before reading. And in the box, so you could see that the box has something, well, we don't see the back side, the back inside web, but in the inside you have the transcription of the newspaper article, well, the sports report. So subs inspire City triumph. City 1, United 0 from B.S. Johnson. City beat United 1-0 at home yesterday, and only a farcical incident towards the end enlivened the tedium of the match. Phipps had a lucky match in the City goal. Within the first 10 minutes, he dropped an easy center but reached the ball just before two United forwards' feet hit it. He was badly caught out of position by a Thompson shot, which landed just behind his bar. And then, after Holman had successfully hunted for a way through the City defense, he watched Lomax stub the ball over the bar from no more than 3 yards out. City seemed to believe that, surviving this, they could survive anything, and gradually came out of defense. First, after a run by Stevens, brought a fine save from Edson, and in the 27th minute, at the ball in the United net, only to be ruled offside. So this is a typical report of a football match, no? And actually, this is an actual article written by Johnson. He was working for the newspaper at the time. He is basing the narrative in his own experience. And I think in all of the novels, you find some anchor of one element of the narrative in Johnson's life. A chance invitation to Nottingham as a newspaper reporter for a football match had reminded Johnson of Tony, a friend who had lived in the city and who had died of cancer 2 years earlier. Wanting to capture the essence of his living presence and pointless death led him to the dilemma of how to construct such a piece of writing. The problem for Johnson was the randomness of the material, past and present interweaving with no chronology. As far as possible, he attempted to make the novel into an 8-hour transcription of that Saturday afternoon as he pondered his friend's death. A newspaper cutting of his match report, headed Sub-Inspire City Triumph, is also stuck in the box. So this is how Johnson refers to his writing and printing technique in this book. The memories of Ton and the routine football reporting, the past and the present, interwove in a completely random manner without chronology. This is the way the mind works, my mind anyway. This randomness was directly in conflict with the technological fact of the bound book, for the bound book imposes an order, a fixed page order on the material. I think I went some way towards solving this problem by writing the book in sections and having those sections not bound together, but loose in a box. So the entire structure of the book, so the bibliographic code, becomes an element that represents the process of memory and the process of weaving the narrative. In the unfortunates, the bibliographic, so you can see, just before I go to my conclusion and before I move to the other novel, you can see an excerpt from the novel here. I know this, so this comes from the first section. I know this city. The mind circles at random, does not remember from one moment to another. Other things interpose themselves. The station exit on a bridge, yes, of course. And the blackened gantries rise like steel gibbets above the Midland red wall opposite. I should turn right towards the city center. Yes, and that pub. So this is the moment when he comes out of the train station and he's looking for his way to the stadium. Another excerpt from another section. By rail car, we went across to Lincoln to see a flat they were thinking of taking. So now he's reminding of his recalling his friend and his partner. The mind is confused. What is this visit or another? The mind has telescoped time here, runs events near to one another in place, into one another in time. Walking the heights, the steep, stony, narrow streets to Lincoln Cathedral. So here we have a memory and is talking about this impossible, the impossibility of controlling the associations. So places and times mix without any particular reason. More examples here. So I don't remember. Why should I? It doesn't matter. Nothing does. It's all chaos. Look at his death. Why? Why not? Is this sort of experience good for students? No, surely not. For all students. But that was an academic question. For me, no. until my son is old enough, perhaps. Did I see him? Did we see them during that summer? What does it matter? A court off Charing Cross Road, Cecil Court, perhaps, with a pub in it. That our love would make Christmas like it was for me before they told me there wasn't a Father Christmas and I had to start giving other people presents back as well, or some such rubbish. These melodramatic, idiotic moments in which life is completely, these stale thoughts, these stale. So you see how is using the technique of the interior monologue, but it's heightening the effect of the interior monologue by breaking the book into these random sections. In The Unfortunates, the bibliographic encoding of the text as a series of loose squares, which are themselves composed of juxtapositions of perceptions, memories, and textual gaps, generates a specific reading frame. By multiplying the possibilities of traversing the text as a semi-determined sequence of lexias, the resulting hypertext becomes a model of the process of trying to make narrative sense of lived experience. The act of reading self-consciously engages with the interior monologue as a technique for giving form to the stream of consciousness through a montage of assorted elements, perceptions, memories, actual speech acts, but also specific arrangements of text on the page and pages on the books. Johnson explores bibliographic codes not only to look for a more truthful connection between fiction and lived experience, but also to reinforce his sense of writing and giving form to writing. So in my view, I would say that the relation between narrative form, page layout, and codex structure is a very strong literary device in this work. First, bibliographic structure works as a material embodiment of the writer's problem in giving structure to a body of writing. The form of the book becomes a writing instance. So the book is also showing itself as a writing product. Bibliographic structure as a material embodiment of the narrator's problem in giving shape to his story. The form of the book becomes a narrating instance. So this form is also calling attention for the nature of narrative. Bibliographic structure as a material embodiment of the randomness of the workings of memory. The form of the book emulates the unconscious associations that sustains levels A and B. So I think that is also trying to show how writing really involves a strange connection between giving form or structure to a series of sentences and blocks of sentences, and giving form to those sentences in some kind of narrative logic. And the memory is emulated through those two processes. And then I think we have to think about two other elements. So bibliographic structure as a material embodiment of the entropy of line. The form of the book emulates the entropic nature of experience. So I think that death, now as we saw in that series of film clips, that collage from his films, death is very much the culmination of that entropy, but entropy is everywhere in his narratives, and sometimes the structure and the complexities of the structure are ways of symbolizing that entropy. And finally, I think, and this is my I think original contribution in the reading of Johnson, readers are made to experience the process of reading the novel through the cognitive priming of the reading process as an assemblage of discrete heterogeneous and fragmentary elements. The form of the book becomes a reading frame through which the action of reading parallels the process of creating narrative about the entropy of life mediated by the randomness of memory. So this is really, in my view, what he really achieves by creating these unique forms of text. So the other novel, just to finish, the other novel, B.S. Johnson, House Mother Novel, it's a really incredible text, and the form is even more specific than the form that we saw there earlier in the Unfortunates. So this is the presentation of the novel, and actually the novel we have a sort of narrator. So that we have 9 characters, and they're all we have the entire narrative is given through the minds of those 9 characters. We will see that at the very end, at the very last page, we have that kind of meta fictional element in which not only the narrator but the writer seems to be represented inside the text. So this is the first page. House Mother introduces friend. I may call you friend. These are also our friends. We no longer refer to them as inmates, cases, patients, or even as clients. These particular friends are also known as nurse, since they have no effective relatives, are orphans in reverse, it is often said. You may, if you wish, join our social evening, friend. You shall see into the minds of our 8 old friends, and you shall see into my mind. You shall follow our social evening through 9 different minds. So the entire narrative is it's based in this home for old people. We have the house mother, who's the ruler of the house, let's say. She abuses the old people. And then we have eight men and women. And for each character, we have a sort of a clinical record that gives us all the diseases and the cognitive deprivation of each character. So they're all losing their ability to make sense of the world, the ability to move. But what is really interesting in this novel, in terms of the layout, is that Johnson has divided a process of giving us the exact same events. So that's a series of activities they are doing, kind of entertainment, after dinner activities that the characters are required in this social evening. And he has divided the novel into 9 groups of 21 pages. So every character has exactly the same amount of space in the book, 21 pages. And so this is a kind of a multiple perspective narrative. We see the exact same events from the perspective of each of the characters. And so the 21 pages are really representing time in a simultaneous way. So it's an attempt of trying to bring simultaneity into the text. So here you have an example. So this would be like page 13 of Sarah Lamson, page 13 of Charlie Edwards, page 13 of Ivy Nichols. And if you look at the bottom of the page, you see this is the running page numbers, but here you have the repeated sequences. And if you go to page 13 of each character, you will realize that there are intersections that tell us that they are listening or seeing at least partially some of the same events. And sometimes we are inside the minds of the characters. Sometimes we have bits of dialogues, and we usually don't have the. So if two characters are speaking, one is speaking in we have his speech in his section, but the speech of the other character is in a different section. So again, Ron Lamson, Gloria Ridge. So these are all pages 13. For instance, this character Rosetta Stanton is the one who's almost at the end of her life, and actually there's a moment when she seems to have died. Pages become blank, and she has almost no ability to think. No, we just have this almost phonetic bits of language. So it's just bits of language that we see in this particular character. So I'm coming to the end of the talk. So what is the relation between narrative form, page layout, and codex structure in House Mother Normal? So the same question. Again, bibliographic structure as material embodiment of the writer's problem in creating a simultaneous representation of 9 interior monologues. So how do you do this kind of multiple simultaneous representation when you have 9 characters and you want to treat all of them with the same intensity? So layout and mise-en-page turn the space of the page into a representation of synchronous time. Bibliographic structure as material embodiment of each narrator's problem in giving shape to their inner minds through synchronous interior monologues. So layout becomes a multidimensional spatial temporal unit for narrating the minds of the characters as simultaneous and unique perspectives on the social evening. So here it's a problem of representing the characters. And also, bibliographic structure becomes a material embodiment of the cognitive condition of the characters. Layout emulates their losing grasp of reality. So if you look at the 9 well, not the 9 because the 9th is the owner of the home, but 8 characters. If you look at the 8 characters, you will see that they all have some loss of grasp, either because they have lost their memory, or they have some kind of dementia, or they are caught in some moment in their past lives. So you have different cognitive conditions, and I think the layout emulates that in the way blanks, for instance, are used to show how characters are not really, some of the characters are not really understanding what is happening. Bibliographic structure as material embodiment of the entropy of life. So the form of the book emulates the entropic nature of experience again. And finally, readers are made to experience the process of reading the novel through the cognitive priming of the reading process as an assemblage of discrete, heterogeneous, and fragmentary elements. Again, the same process. The form of the book becomes a reading frame through which the action of reading parallels the process of extending awareness about the simultaneity of multiple perspectives through the addition of layers in the construction of multiple subjectivities, but also through our own reading limitations as an emulation of the loss of grasp and the entropy of life. So this is really a complex way of framing the entire process. And when we come to the end of the book, after House Mother Normal has shown us that she's abusing all those old people, then we have this kind of writer, narrator figure come into the narrative. And here you see, friends, I am about to step outside the convention, the framework of 21 pages per person. So this is page 22. So he creates a break in his own system. Thus, you see, I too am the puppet or concussion of a writer. You always knew there was a writer behind it all. Ah, there's no fooling you, readers. A writer who has me at present standing in the post orgasmic nude, but who still expects me to be his words without embarrassment or personal comfort. So you see this from his skull. It is a diagram of certain aspects of the inside of his skull. What a laugh. I hope to have shown how book structure and graphic layout contribute to the experience of narrativity by fracturing the identity of the fictional world between verbal and typographic signifiers in ways that draw attention to the expressive function of bibliographic codes. Johnson shows how the processing of print is a component of the discursive plane of telling the story. The incremental and relational process of reading is thus foregrounded as the cognitive correlative of producing narrative meaning. The process of constructing the story is experienced as the process of reading the story. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel, for this very
I
illuminating.
think we don't have your sound. Do we have your sound? No. Oh, it's me. I was muted. I have your sound. Yes.
So thank you very much for this illuminating exegesis of experimental novels. I have some questions which you may believe are really very basic. But before I pose my questions, I want to say that listening to you, it seems to me that this kind of novel is very much resembles very much the text of somebody like Lynn Higinian,
Mm-hmm.
My Life, or Susan Howe,
Mm-hmm.
That This, which is
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
really like this, only they're not put, these are not leaves in a box.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're bound. But they also explore this dimension of instantaneous record of thoughts that come to your mind, and they try to render the chaotic flux of consciousness. Now, I don't know how a novel works in terms of intensity, because the way, how does it build up to a climax, if it has a climax, or how does it work in terms of plot? I think
I think that in this case, which is House Mother Novel, I think this is really a masterpiece because and we can think that it's very difficult to sustain those kinds of experiments and still write a long narrative form like the novel. And Johnson really achieves to do that. And the final chapter, which is the House Mother chapter, is really the climax of the text, because that's only there that we have a full grasp of what's happening. And we realize the kind of abuse and the kind of entertainment that is taking place, and how the characters are being somehow made fun of by this caretaker, no? And so the novel really builds up, I think, and because we have the characters are very different. Most of them are working class, and Johnson has some of the characters go over their memories back to the First World War, the Middle War period, Second World War. Sometimes they remember vacations, their marriage, their children. So we have these old people giving us their personal stories, and they're. I think here it's only one evening, so you are just seeing that particular moment, but the intensity of what's happening and the intensity of the language really drives you forward. So it really catches you. Now, I think the experiment is not random. No, it's, I think every single space, every single break has some kind of logic to it. And it's very the text is very dramatic. I think this would be easy to put on stage. We could imagine it. So he opens up. So for the first page for every character is their clinical record. No, like for instance, Ivy Nichols, one of the characters says, age 79, marital status, widow, sight 65%, hearing 55%, touch 65%, taste 80%, smell 70%, movement 75%, CQ count 10, pathology, contractures, asthma, osteoporosis, mainly of limbs, inguinal hernia, bronchitis, osteoarthritis, among others. So we have a clinical record that gives you the physical condition of the character. And then you have the perceptions, the thoughts, the memories, the speeches of each of the characters. Some of them are interacting, others are just in a corner observing. I think it's very different from what happens in Susan Howe and in other poets that do this kind of experiments on the page, because for most poetry works, the page is the unit, or maybe the spread. So they will be doing those experiments by working on this planographic stage of the page and the spread, but it's very rare that you can sustain a typographic form through 200 pages. No, so this long form usually it's only one page at a time. We have those instances. Johnson is very. I guess that now is become more readable because our technologies and our experiences with forms and experimentation has increased. But the thing that I like about this work, especially in some of his novels, is that he has invented a specific form for a specific text. So the kind of page layout that we have in this novel, as far as I know, had never been used like this before. So this is the first time someone attempts to do something like this.
And my question is, what do you mean by bibliographic structure? I mean, bibliographic.
Well, bibliographic is sometimes we use that rather loosely. So I'm using that the concept comes from textual studies from the 1980s, maybe, when some scholars started to claim that we shouldn't be just focusing on the text, the running line of the text, but we should look at the entire book. And when you look at the entire book as a form of meaning producing material, then you have to look at the way page layout is also part of the meaning of the text. Even when you're talking about a very conventional page layout already is giving certain kinds of instructions for the reader about the genre of the text, about how for instance, the text is divided into blocks, long chapters, short chapters. Even very conventional forms have some kind of bibliographic code. So bibliographic code is a way of referring to all the features that arrange the book, that turn the text into a book. So all those features, these might include the setting on the page, so the typographic mise en page, also the division of sections, also the choice of font, the bounding, every aspect that really makes a book a book. So that would be part of the code. The code is maybe the notion of code is not the best notion. It's more of a metaphor than, because it's not a strict code. But you can see that there are codes clearly. No, so if you enter a bookshop and you look at the covers of the books, you very quickly realize if it's what is the genre of the book. No, just by looking at the covers. Is this fantasy? Is this gothic? Is this detective novel? Is this more? Is this for teenagers, for young adults, for children? So all of these forms are codified by convention, by the way the printing business devises certain conventions for organizing the texts in the books. And I think Johnson was trying to find new ways of encoding the text in the book, so presenting the text in book form. And one of the ways was what he did in Unfortunates, which was to unbound the book and give the narrative as a series of loose sections in a box. I don't know if anyone has any other question. I guess no one knew this writer, because whenever I talk about this writer, I always have the impression that no one ever really heard about him.
There were some people who raised their hands.
Yes,
So
please.
just go ahead and voice your question. Well, then I have another question. When you say codex structure, what do you mean by codex?
Codex is the book that is bound like this, no?
Yes.
So the book, usually you find, so books have many different, historically, they have many different forms.
Yes.
When the medium was papyrus, it was a scroll.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't fold the papyrus would break. So the form of the book was just a series of scrolls. Books were scrolls. And then when in the early Christian era, people started to use animal skins, they bound the book. And so this structure when you have the bound book with this kind of random access, you can read any page. It's called a codex.
Ah.
And you also have other forms. So today, when you think about electronic books, you have the screen, the multiple. So you have just one page, which is the screen, but then the screen, because it's light, then you can have multiple inscriptions on the same surface. So that's another form of the book. We tend to identify the book with this form because it's the familiar form for more than 500 years now, this kind of printed codex. But so one of the codex structures is the quire. So the books are sewn on this margin or glued. So one of the elements of the structure is the quire. And in the case of the Fortunates, Johnson is unbounding, in a way, is unbounding the quire. So the different parts of the book become loose.
But what is quire?
The quire is so if you think of old books, printed books, you say if you have if this would be the printing area for a book, the surface of printing, usually books would be bound books would be doubled like this, and this would be the folio format, which is one fold. Or if you do like this will be, if you do another fold, this would be the quarto format, smaller. And then if you fold again, this would be the octavo format. And these are the quires, because this is one of the components of the book. So according to the size of the book, you would print, say if you are doing a quarto format, no, so this would go to the press, and you would be printing here and 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 here. So you would have 8. If you were going to do an octavo format, you would have 8 pages printed on this side and 8 on this side. And then this would be folded and cut, and this part here would be sewn with other parts. And so this is the quire. So the quire is like one element that is sewn together with other elements to form a book. And the quire can have different sizes. No? So if you're using, most of the formats that we have today descend from the large format of paper that was used by Renaissance printers. So we have the folio, the quarto, the octavo, the duodecimo, so different. So in English, I think is in quarto, in folio, in quarto, in octavo. So that's one of the elements of book structure.
Okay, well, if there are no more questions, then I have to thank you again for being so generous and giving this lecture to our students. I think it was very illuminating, especially the kind of novel that we are not very familiar with.
Yeah.
And thank you very much.
Well,
and I hope you may want to come again.
Yes, I will. It was a pleasure now. So it's always nice to collaborate. And so I look forward. So maybe we can extend this in the future. Also, you come to Coimbra sometime, or some of the people involved in the program. So all of the people here are in the English, the Advanced Studies PhD and MA program. Yeah,
More or less, yes.
more or less. Okay.
But well, some are doctoral students. Yes.
Doctoral students.
And
So this is also a demonstration of the kind of work that we have been doing in the PhD program in materialities of literature. So looking at this relation between language and book forms, and also computer forms. We also look at digital forms, so different technologies, sound recordings of literature as well. So the whole program is media oriented.
okay.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And I wish you a good week. And enjoy the rest of the day.
The same to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miriam.